Hi guys, it's Kirsty here. Welcome to the Truth Teller live series. I'm here with our Truth Teller tonight, Jason Goldberg. Hey Jason.
Hey, what's up? How are you?
Thank you for joining us. It's going to be a fun night.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
So for anyone tuning in, we are going to be talking about your weight loss journey, 130 pounds. That's a huge amount.
Yes, it is. It's quite a bit. It's like a whole human.
It is. I mean, when you think about it, like I always think when I lose a few pounds, how many bags of potatoes that is. And and there's something about that visual that I go, wow, I used to carry that around. Like imagine if you put that 130 pounds in a backpack now, you'd struggle up a hill, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I had a friend who was like 115, 120 pounds. And when I told her I had lost 115 pounds, she jumped on my back and said, you used to carry this around. And like, I was like, can you give me warning next time? Like, I think I just herniated something, but it was great to to really recognize like, oh my God, I shed a lot. It's crazy.
Oh my God, that's crazy. We've got a few people tuning in. Hey, Lois. So as you tune in, yes, feel free to send us comments. We'll see them every now and then. I'll stop. I'll answer any questions that we have as we go along and get Jason to. So stay tuned. So in terms of this weight loss journey for you, how does it feel to be in this new body?
That's a really good question. How does it feel? It's such a big question, or I'm making it into a big question. So this is all about truth telling, right? So that's what so I'm not going to give the canned answer. Oh, it feels great. I feel so empowered and everything's wonderful. So yeah, no, it feels awesome. One of the big things for me is I love clothing, and so it's awesome being able to go into a store and be able to buy things off the rack and not have to go to Big and Tall and not have to order things online. So that's great, and it's also a fun thing to look in the mirror and still see the 330-pound version of myself sometimes. So being in the new body doesn't always mean being in the new body. Sometimes you're in the old body. So the new body is a great celebration. It's a great reminder of contrast of what it felt like to be the 332-pound version. And it's a great reminder of where I still have work to do to embrace the fact that I'm no longer 332 pounds.
That's amazing. And I think that I was talking to somebody earlier today and she was saying that she didn't want to, she actually private messaged me her before and after photos because she didn't want to, she was afraid if she failed that those photos would be out there. And I myself, as you saw today, I posted that I've lost 15 pounds and I'll notice every now and then I go into this like, I'll just maybe bloat from a couple of meals or something, or it's just that time of the month for us ladies. And I'll literally be like, oh my God, I've put it all back on. And then when I looked at those photos today of me before and after, I'm like, it's like they say with people with eating disorders, you have this body dysmorphia.
Yeah.
And so have you felt that? I mean, obviously you've lost so much more, but do you still have times where you feel like you're fat?
Oh, no, all the time. Like that happens to me quite often. And it's funny that you say that. So for me, like when I see 2 pounds or a pound and a half pop up on the scale, it may as well be 42 pounds or 72 pounds or 102 pounds, because the immediate thing when you have that kind of weight loss, and especially when I have kind of the built-in, I don't want to say built-in accountability, but in a sense it is the built-in accountability that part of, your weight loss is a part of now what you do for a living. Sometimes you can feel extra pressure. Like, you don't want to gain this weight back. You don't want to, you'll negate the power of your story. And it's all just crap. It's all just these little, what I call it in my book, the baby assassin. It's just this little karate chopping judo master in your head trying to trick you into thinking that something that's just a fleeting thought is something that's true that you need to believe in and live from. But it's not. It's just, it's 2 pounds and it'll go away. And so now it's been an interesting transition because now I have like normal weight issues, like a bloat after a big meal or a pound of weight gain because of salt or something like this. So it's an interesting transition to be in that place where I'm dealing with normal weight issues. That's weird for me.
I know. I laugh when, because I became vegan 9 months ago and moving to LA 6 years ago, you're having green juices. Lois said it's a bit echoey. So let me know if that continues. I think we've sorted it out for now. And I laugh because a binge for me now is having some organic 2-ingredient potato chips and salt, or having coconut bliss ice cream, vegan ice cream, and maybe like once every 2 weeks. That's it. And so it is. It's really like adjusting yourself. And I think, like you say, seeing those two kilos or pounds over here on the scale. So do you then go, well, I shouldn't be weighing myself as often? Like, do you go, well, that could be dysfunctional thinking. How do I manage that?
So I try as much as possible not to label behaviors like that, because I think that, yeah, if I say it's like obsessive, then it's automatically obsessive. So for me, it's so I would much rather get on the scale and not take the number seriously than tell myself I need to have willpower to not weigh myself because it's unhealthy. Right. Because then I'm giving into like, there's something unhealthy about me that I need to be aware of, versus like, cool, this is the human experience. I jump on a scale and sometimes I've lost weight, and I jump on a scale and sometimes I've gained weight. And if neither one of those is significant, then it's just one thing I'm doing in my day, just like brushing my teeth. I don't have any issues with charging my phone at night. Right. It's just something to do. I don't have to overcome charging my phone. I don't have to have like a work ethic to charge my phone. It's just what I do. Right.
Hey, Kimberly is tuning in. Good to have you all here. So keep letting us know your comments and questions as you join in. We're talking to Jason Goldberg about his 130-pound weight loss tonight, for those that are just joining us. So what you were just talking about there, though, is really you're reframing your behavior. So you're still adjusting. You're recognizing, you're self-aware enough to recognize that that's not helpful for yourself. And you're going, I need to think differently about the way I'm doing this. I want to start, for those who you mentioned about your book, so it's Prison Break.
Yes.
And there's, this fantastic story that you tell at the very, very beginning where your credit card is cut off. Yes. And that's kind of the beginning for you of figuring out that this is an issue. So do you want to give us the condensed version of what happens when you get irate that your credit card's been blocked that day?
Sure, yeah, and that's what most people would never probably guess about me, is that I was very angry my entire life. I very just tons of anger and a lot of sadness and depression kind of my whole life. I was always the jokey class clown, center of attention kind of person, but a lot of that was something I built as a way to feel like I added significance in the world, or I had some kind of significance, or I added value in the world, since it wasn't with my physical appearance, because I had been chubby since I was, in first grade, and I got up to 250 pounds by the time I was 15, when kids are really loving and compassionate and accept you for who you are as a person. And then all the way up to my late 20s, when I was 332 pounds, I just always carried around a lot of different types of weight, right? This physical weight, this mental weight, this emotional weight. And I talk about that a lot in the book. And what happened on this particular day that's outlined in the first chapter of the book, that's really kind of the beginning of my transformation story, the beginning of the end in some respects, was me going to make a purchase on Amazon with my credit card. And I was in my 20s. I was making well over six figures in a corporate tech job. I was a director of engineering and operations for a tech firm based in Florida. And so this, $70 order of socks, actually, I'm a big sock. I'm obsessed with funky socks. But I know that's like that's all we have as men for self-expression. Leave us alone. Don't judge me. So I tried to make this purchase. My card got declined. And I just went into this rage, because that was just the way I was at this time in my life. If something didn't go exactly according to plan, and I'm sure I'm the only person listening to this that has ever gotten upset because things haven't gone exactly according to plan. But anytime something didn't go exactly according to plan in my life, the way I thought it should be, I didn't have the normal human setting of, well, that's disappointing, or, oh, that sucks, or, oh man, I wish that had been different. It was just rage, right? It was just directly into boiling over anger.
Where was the rage coming from, do you think?
I think it comes all the way back from when I was a kid. I mean, just being picked on and bullied for being the fat kid, and just always, never feeling like I was enough. And it's not like a parental thing. I was raised by a single mother. I'm an only child, and she loved me unconditionally. She just poured love into me constantly. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't that kind of thing. I think it was really everybody else on the outside. So being picked on in school and all that stuff, and being bullied, and really just never feeling like you're enough because you're the fat kid. And so I think that was one of those things where anger to me is a more this is going to sound weird. Anger is a more productive version of fear, right? So fear may be less damaging to your system than anger, but at least anger, you're doing something about what you feel. And so I think a lot of times, especially with men, the way we express fear is directly to anger, because we're taught we can't express fear. We can't be sad. We can't be afraid. So we go into anger. And so I think that's what happened to me. It's like, okay, well, if you're not going to give me control, if you're not going to allow me to feel significant, then I'm going to have control over whatever I can have control over. And so that's going to be that I'm going to punch a hole in a wall if I feel like it. And the wall can't say shit. Mm-hmm. That's it. Like, I have control over that, right? So luckily, I never directed my anger towards a person. I've always loved living inanimate objects that got the brunt of my anger. So when my card had gotten declined, I got super angry. I called my bank and I'm just fuming. And, the poor guy on the phone, like he's trying to be so nice and helpful. And I want to kill him and everybody that he loves because I'm just so upset. And essentially I asked why my card wasn't working. And what he told me was that my card had been declined because of some potentially fraudulent activity. And so I didn't ask nicely. I demanded to know, what the F were these charges, and did somebody steal my identity, or what was going on with this card? Why did this happen? And he told me that the charges that had gotten flagged as being fraudulent were that there were 4 fast food transactions in one day in Orlando, the city where I lived. And because the system didn't think that anybody would actually eat at 4 fast food restaurants in one day, that it must have been that somebody stole my card. They were making small purchases to make sure the card hadn't been cut off before they went and made a bigger purchase. And so the fraud department flagged it. And so he told me that. And immediately I knew they weren't fraudulent charges, right? I had eaten at 4 fast food restaurants in one day. Like, we're not even supposed to have more than 3 meals a day, right? I had 4 meals and they were all fast food. And in that moment, that's the day I say the universe cut me off. In that moment, there was a multi-billion-dollar bank that basically said, you're an out-of-control fat ass who can't be trusted with your own money, so we're going to stop you since you can't do it yourself. And there was no rage in that moment. There was just sadness. And there was this feeling like, I'm trying to find so hard who I can blame for why this is happening, because, in personal growth, we have all these mantras like, I want to bring the spirit of love and life into the world and spread my intuition to the Himalayas and my Lululemon pants. Like, those are all great. My mantra was, who can I blame? That was what I went out into the world with. And for some reason, I don't know why, and I don't question it because I don't care why. For some reason, that day when that happened, I could not find somebody to blame. I tried so hard, and everything that came to my mind to blame my boss, blame my employees, blame my customers, it just wasn't sticking. It felt like bullcrap. And so this was the first day where I was like, okay, something's off here. I don't know what it is. This is not normal to have the bank tell you that your eating habits trigger fraudulent activity on your account, right? Yeah. Something's off about this. And not to mention that it wasn't the physical weight only. It's not like I had this, I was so happy all the time. I was also really sad and upset. So I knew then something had to change. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know how to do it, but I started that exploration then.
Yeah. It's like, I remember eating McDonald's 3 times a day for a month at one point. And at the time, I did not think it was that unusual.
Yeah.
So I can understand how people get into these funks and habits, and I think there's something about, well, I mean, as you said, you had 4 that one particular day, but typically if you had 3, I think there's something about, if you're just having a meal, it wasn't like I was having 5 burgers and 70 packets of fries. I was having 1 Whopper burger, 1 or Big Mac, whatever it was, 1 fries and a drink. So I think there's a lot of people who aren't educated to the amount of calories that are in that one meal was actually more calories than I should have in close to a week. And things like that, I think a lot of us just don't even realize. So you were talking about how with all of this weight, because you'd been heavy from about age 15.
No, I was heavy from 7.
Right. So but by 15, you were 250 pounds. You were big as a teenager, but so you'd had weight issues your whole life. And this thing of feeling like you had to be funny to be accepted, do you think that is almost more damaging than the weight? What it does to your self-esteem, your self-worth, like feeling like you're never enough, that you have to be, you made comments in the book as well about how people would never compliment you on your looks. They would comment on your character, and how, so in some way, all of that stuff was affecting you as much as physically being heavy was, but emotionally.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's why, honestly, anytime somebody says they want to talk about weight loss with me, I actually immediately in my head go to the emotional and the spiritual and the financial weight that I was carrying around, like always being worried about money and always being worried about enoughness and always being worried about being loved and always being worried about all these things that were going on or things that weren't even going on that I was just making up. That's the weight that really held on to me. And that was the thing that I didn't get the chance to really notice and play with as much until I had started losing the physical weight. because where I had thought my entire life, the reason I was angry, sad, and depressed and anxious and all these things was because I was such a prisoner in my body, and I was so unhappy with the way I looked, and I had such body shame about the way I looked. Losing the weight didn't seem to take that away. And so it was interesting that I was addressing the physical form that I was in, but I wasn't addressing what was really going on beneath the surface, which is all these other forms of weight. And so that's really what I think is the big weight, because there may be people listening to this right now that don't have physical weight issues, but I guarantee that everybody listening to this is overweight in some area of their life.
Yeah, and I think that it all comes back to, we all numb with, you were just using food. So whether people are using sex, whether they're using alcohol, whether they're using drugs, like this is really when you are not happy with yourself, your feelings, your aggression, your anger, when you're not enough, then we're all going to use something as our tool to cope until we learn to develop our own self-awareness and skills around that. So what for you was the beginning of that journey? We'll do both. We'll talk about the food weight loss, but also the personal. So for me, like, for example, one of the earliest memories I have of this is when I tried to go on a diet. And the minute that was restricted from me, the food, I noticed myself wanting to drink alcohol. And the minute I then said, well, you can't have alcohol, so it was like I would go to the next thing. So I started to become aware that food wasn't the problem, that was just my way of using something to cope. So did you have moments of that, and how far into the weight loss journey was it? Because there's a lot of people who lose a couple of 100 pounds through sheer determination and, going on The Biggest Loser, all these shows, they can very quickly get it off. You go plant-based, you can go extreme, you can juice for 90 days, but it's not sustainable if you don't do all of this other work. So where in your journey were you before you started to recognize that path?
Yeah, the good thing about my journey with that is that, the way that I got my jump start, and I had been on diets my entire life. I mean, I literally tried every single diet, and I had actually, kind of funny enough, I had the same family doctor from the time I was 15 until the time I was 32 or 33. I actually went from father to son because I was with them for so long, and they had records of everything that I had tried diet wise. And there literally was everything on there. And for whatever reason, it didn't work. And it was really, it was more personal responsibility than anything, which I finally realized later on, and what I now call self-leadership. But what ended up happening was, after all this had happened and I had gotten to this weight, I knew I needed to do something drastic. And so I started researching options for bariatric surgery, for weight loss surgery. And so I actually had weight loss surgery in the summer of 2011. So over 6 years ago. And that's something that I had a lot of shame around initially, because my concern was that people would say, oh, you took the easy way out. And I can't tell you, there's nothing further from the truth that that's an easy way out. It's a drastic thing. The surgery itself is its own big deal. But if you don't get really sincere about your relationship with food and with exercise and with wellness and just with health in general, mental and physical health, not only will you not be successful in losing it, but you'll easily gain it back and then some. Right? That can all come back. So one of the great things about what I did with the surgery was that they also had a psych evaluation as a part of the surgery, to make sure that you were actually going to stick to a committed, devoted sense of being when you take this drastic measure, because otherwise it's crap. It's going to be one more crash diet, just a hugely expensive and drastic crash diet, but it's going to be another crash diet. So I had to be working with that stuff right away. And right in the beginning, I didn't have to worry so much about it, because in the very beginning, the first 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds kind of came off on their own. And then you get to this point where you're like, oh, wait, the scale has stopped moving. I'm supposed to be losing 100, 110, 120, 130 pounds. What's going on? And it's like, this is what we prepared you for. Like, this is not, you don't just get to screw around and the weight pours off. You have to actually do something about it. So yeah, so from very early on, it was, what do I need to do in cultivating my mindset to make sure that these things stick? And if I don't have that foundation, in any given moment, I truly believe that your mind is either an asshole or an asset, right? And so I had to really cultivate, how do I make my mind an asset so that I can have these change stick, so I can be sustainable.
Yeah. So when your mind's an asshole, what were the moments where you wanted to binge? What were the kind of the worst things that you did in that time, that when you were re-triggered? Were you able to catch yourself, or were there times where you relapsed?
So here's the thing. People ask me all the time how I lost 130 pounds. and I said I didn't, I lost 1 pound 130 times. Right?
Yep.
At one binge moment, I didn't have one relapse moment. I didn't have any of that because I was literally focusing on 1 pound and 1 day at a time. And so I didn't need to commit and say, for the next 6 months or a year, I'm going to be super devoted. That right there makes me fail. Like, I'm done before I even start. That's why, New Year's resolutions don't work. I would wake up in the morning and say, for today, just for today, this is a big thing in my community. We say this all the time, JFT, just for today, I commit to making good food choices. Tomorrow, I could totally screw up and eat an entire cheesecake and like smear chocolate syrup all over my body. That's tomorrow. For today, I commit to making good food choices. And I would do that day in and day out. And so I never had to be committed for more than 24 hours.
And in terms of good food choices for people who are tuning in, I think that they're, for me, I see it now as an act of self-love. That when I choose to go organic, or where I choose to eat vegan, where I choose to have a green smoothie, things that I would never in a million years have eaten before. Like, the first time I had a green smoothie, I nearly threw it up. Like, it was so gross. I was like, what are these people eating? And this is the thing, when you've come from eating McDonald's 3 times a day for a month and you've had the kind of diet that some of us have had, I feel like it's one thing at a time too, I've changed a lot over the last 10 years, but it's not, it wasn't quick, it was like, first I adjusted my breakfast and I went from eating greasy bacon and eggs, though I know you still like your bacon, to eating, porridge or oatmeal, and then going to an almond yogurt with fresh berries. And so it's been, avocado on toast, but it's been like 4 transitions just on my breakfast meal. And I've done that with every meal. Now I'm working on adding a lot more greens in. So what are some of the tips and, books, documentaries, food hacks, anything that you do in particular that you think would help people who are starting out?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So my thing, one of the things I love in life and business is, I think gamifying whatever you can is super, super important, right? Playfulness is like my number one value, right? Joy, enthusiasm, and playfulness. I have my bracelet here says spirit of play, which you won't be able to read, but it says spirit of play. It's about bringing a spirit of play to whatever's going on in your world, challenges, opportunities, whatever it is. So I love the ability to gamify things. So for me, I would gamify exercising and eating. So that's one thing that I'll talk about real quick. And then the other thing is about food choices and not having to worry about decision fatigue. So those are kind of two prongs, if you will, of how I did and do continue to live my life in as healthy a way as possible. And let me just say, guys, like I am not a gym rat. I am not in the gym 7 hours a week. There are plenty of weeks where I'm just really busy with travel, and making the gym a priority is just something I don't choose. And I don't beat myself up about that, right? I know that I have much more life to live than that single week, and I try to be gentle on myself. I still love sweets, and I will indulge in those once in a while, and it's not a big deal, right? As long as I know that in the holistic view of how I'm treating my body and myself, that is the exception and not the rule. So I just want to kind of say that as an aside. But as far as gamification is concerned, listen, we can make, and just to your point, exactly, I love what you said about like these small incremental changes to one meal at a time, right? That's right.
Don't do it all at once. Like, if you try and go, I'm going to become plant-based today, you're going to hate everything. You're going to hate almond yogurt. You're going to hate not eating real cheese.
Yep.
Like, you're going to hate like half the foods, and you're not going to be able to stick at it. But if you swap from milk to coconut milk and you eventually adjust to the taste and you get used to it, like, I think it's just picking one thing and working on improving that.
Yeah. Well, so for me, the gamification thing is the way that I would do something like that. And so a couple of examples of where I've done gamification around this. The first one was working out. So for a while, and I've stopped it now because I just got bored and wanted to change up my routine. But for quite a while, for probably a couple of years, I was a member of the 5 a.m. club, right? And so I wake up at 5 a.m. and I would go to the gym, and this is how I would start my day. And in the beginning, it was, there's no way I can get up at 5 a.m. and go to the gym. That's just not happening. Like, the bed's too comfy, the dog is too comfy, the whatever's too comfy. Like, I'm just not doing it. Right? And so where most people would say, okay, well, this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to get up at 5 a.m. and go to the gym. And then they don't do it one time and they feel like they're failures and they never do it again. So the way I gamified this was, okay, cool. The goal for tomorrow is literally to get up at 5 a.m., stand up for 30 seconds and go back to bed. Right? Then I can prove to myself that I can be up and out of bed at 5 a.m., but I'm going right back to sleep. And then the next day would be, okay, I'm going to get up at 5 a.m. and I'm actually going to put on the gym clothes that I have next to the bed, and then I'm going to go back to sleep. right? Like it's these little super incremental things to prove to myself that I can do it. But everybody wants to take big steps. They think that a big drastic result requires big massive action. Great. If taking big massive action works for you, if it's effective, I don't do right or wrong, good or bad. I do effective versus ineffective. If it's effective for you to take massive action the first time you jump into something and that works for you, freaking fantastic. That's awesome. If that doesn't work for you, like you're me, do the smallest step possible. You want to run a marathon? And I say to somebody, great, you want to run a marathon. What's your first smallest step? Well, I think it's to run a 5K. No, it's to go buy some shoes. Like literally the smallest step you can take. And so I kept doing that to the point where like getting up at 5 a.m. was comfortable, standing up out of bed was comfortable, putting on the clothes was comfortable, putting on my shoes was comfortable, going to the gym for like 10 minutes at 5 a.m. was comfortable. And before you know it, it's just something I do.
Yeah. I know. For a while, I put my shoes on top of my laptop. So when I'd get up in the morning, my runners would be on my thing. Some people sleep in them. But yeah, for me, it was like just telling myself, you're going to go for a 10-minute walk every day. And then when I'd get out there, I'd enjoy the sun, I'd feel good, and I'd usually walk for longer. But yes, not going straight to, I'm going to go and work out and be boxing with a trainer. And then when I finish, I can't sit on the toilet without throwing myself down on the seat because my legs are so sore. I'm like a cripple. So yes, crazy. So I think that's a great tip. Did you say there were two parts to it?
Yeah. So the other part is, and I want to give one more gamification thing real quick. Good. That's okay. Because I think
these are great.
Yeah. So here's one of my favorites. So I love sweets, right? And I just moved from North Carolina to LA, but when I was in North Carolina, there was this French bakery, right? The best French bakery. And I know you don't typically associate French bakeries in Raleigh, North Carolina, but it was amazing. And they had the most amazing scones. They have this white chocolate chip cinnamon scone that literally will change your life for the better or worse. I'm not sure, but it'll change your life. So here's the thing though. I love working from coffee shops and I would love to go work from that coffee shop. And there were healthy things I could get there. And we'll talk about again, the second prong is about the decision fatigue. There was a meal that I could have at that bakery that was extremely healthy and in line with what I wanted to be eating. And so I would want to go there and eat that meal and work. But then I'm surrounded by freaking scones, right? How do you do that? So now traditional wisdom would say either number one, you stay away from that place, right? Get away from it. Just like we were talking about with the scale. Well, don't go on the scale because that's unhealthy behavior. Well, don't put yourself around the scones because then you have to have too much willpower. So conventional wisdom says don't go to the cafe. Don't put yourself around the scones. The secondary conventional wisdom is go there and focus on your willpower and stare the scones in the face and say, I'm not going to eat you. I'm not going to eat you. I'm not going to eat you. Maybe that works for some people. That would not work for me. I'd have 3 scones smashed into my face within 3 minutes. So here's what I did instead. I made it into a game. I went there and I said, listen, here's the game we're going to play. I'm going to be working here for the next 2 hours, right? I'm going to sit here and work on my laptop for 2 hours. And when I leave, I'm buying a scone, right? I'm telling you right now, I'm buying a scone and I'm taking it with me. So let's just see, just for fun, if I can go in 30-minute increments and not buy the scone, knowing that I'm going to buy the scone when I leave. Like there's no scarcity here. I get to buy the scone at the end. And so I'd set my timer for 30 minutes. And every time the 30 minutes went off, I'd be like, it's pretty cool. Went 30 minutes without the scone. That's pretty awesome. Doesn't matter because I'm buying it later, but it's pretty cool that I was able to hold off. I do that for 2 hours. And at the end of the 2 hours, it's like, I don't want the scone anymore. It's so cool that I went through these 4 30-minute periods and didn't eat it. And I'm allowing myself to have it if I want it. I don't want it anymore. It's way too sweet to know that I just won this game. And I wouldn't buy, and once in a while I would, but 99% of the time I wouldn't buy the scone.
I do think there's a big part with weight loss around punishment. Yes. And so for me going vegan, this is the first time in 20 years of yo-yoing with my diet that it hasn't felt like punishment or restriction. Like I was so ready to do it because I'd done so much of the emotional work that there wasn't this feeling of like, oh, I can't have this or that. And I really said to myself from the very beginning, if this stops feeling good, because I just had so much energy. So before this, I was lethargic, I was gassy, I was bloated, I was tired every day. And then going plant-based, my energy went through the roof. Like I couldn't believe the difference in how I felt. So I went, okay, I'm going to stick at this a bit longer. It was for a retreat I was going to. I didn't think I would become vegan. I never in a million years thought I wouldn't eat cheese. But I went, well, as soon as this becomes punishment and restriction or issue for me, then I'll reevaluate that. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
What was your body like when, because I think that sometimes it's like me eating McDonald's every day for a month and I didn't think that there was a problem with that. Looking back, I remember going to nutritionists, naturopaths, like different things, being like, I shouldn't be iridologists. I'm sleepy all the time. I'm gassy. I mean, like, I'm lucky I was single, because I don't think anyone would have wanted to be in that bed with me. It's like, yep, we're going there, Jason. So it's the Truth Teller series, people. But I know that there's people who are tuning in who are overweight who know what I'm talking about. And that is not normal. If you are not shitting regularly without needing to take laxatives, if you are heartburning every time you eat something normal, if you're gassy and farting and bloated all the time and you're sleepy every afternoon after lunch, that is not normal. And you don't have to feel like that. And you don't have to take pills for all of those conditions. You have to change your diet. Yeah. And so what did your body, you're going to share with me, you farting all the time?
Well, I'm sorry, that hasn't gone away. So I guess I still have some work to do. There's just holes in all my sheets. So what was the question again? By the way, what I was saying was, I feel like we're talking about the Misfit Seven Dwarves. There's bloated, gassy. There's like a new Disney movie that's coming out any day now based on this conversation.
What did it feel like to be in a 250-pound meat suit for you?
Oh, right. Yeah, 332 pounds, right?
Wow.
At my highest, yeah.
Okay.
So it felt, breathing was always a challenge, right? Like, especially like a flight of stairs, breathing was a challenge. It's funny. Okay, so I'm trying to think back to the biological, physiological ways that it felt to be in that body. But I'll tell you, man, it was way more than that. It was like what it felt to be like in that body was just shame. To sit down in an airplane seat, be too ashamed to ask for the extender, and so to put the two ends of the seatbelt kind of underneath my shirt, and then put the shirt over it, so when they walked by, it would look like it was probably connected underneath, but it wasn't, right? And to constantly feel like you're in people's way, and feel like if you're sitting at a table next to somebody, you're so worried that your fat is spilling over and hitting the people next to you, and that you're a burden to them, or that you have to hide when you eat because you don't want people judging you. That, oh, look at Fatty going crazy on that, those ribs or whatever. Like, that's what it felt like to be in that body. And yes, there was all these issues with clothes always feeling tight and always feeling like I need to readjust myself and always looking in the mirror and wondering how I'm looking and all that stuff. And I still struggle with some of that stuff today. But the biggest thing was just how it affected doing things in my daily life that most people don't even worry about. They don't even think about.
What are the parts that you still struggle with today?
I think there's still, it's funny, you mentioned body dysmorphia earlier. I think there's still some of that around, in the grand scheme of things, I've been at this target weight now for, just a few years, right? So let's say it's 3 years. So out of my 37 years on this planet, 3 of them have been spent in a body that's healthier and that looks more like the way I'd like it to look. 34 were not, or even if we're being, really legit here, that it happened when I was 6 or 7, 27 years or 24 years or whatever it is. So I think there's still an adjustment period for myself where there's still some residual stuff there. And the practice for me is to notice that stuff. And again, not to shame myself for feeling those things, right? Because it'd be very easy to say like, dude, you lost the weight, get over it. Right. Yeah. Like get over it is I hate the term get over it. Get over it to me is what I think most women feel like when you tell them to calm down. Like whatever that is. Like I feel like that's the version of that for me. Yeah. Don't tell me to calm down. I'm gonna get even more. When you tell me just to get over it, I'm gonna resist even more. So I need to instead of getting over it, I need to get with it.
Well, and even with grief, people often say you've grieved long enough, someone's died, move on. It's the same, these are feelings. And the reality is you feel how you feel for as long as you feel. Right. So with you losing that amount of weight, did you have any excess skin? What's sort of gone on for you with that?
Yeah, definitely. So I was super lucky. I don't know if it was an age thing or if it was an elasticity thing or if it was that I went into weight training as soon as I was able to, like as soon as I got cleared by the doctor. The 6 months after surgery, I was like seriously a drill sergeant. Didn't feel like it. I mean, I wasn't like, again, it wasn't a depriving thing or a punishing thing. It was just like, this is my opportunity to literally reinvent myself. I am going to do exactly what they said to the letter the entire time. So I think that helped a lot, but still definitely like in the stomach region and stuff, there's, that's not something I'm super, comfortable with still. And I've thought about, more surgeries. I've thought about, like tummy tucks and all this stuff, but that stuff is just so invasive. And I'd rather if I do that one day, which is fine if I do, I don't have any judgment of myself if I do it. If I do that one day, I want it to be after there's already been more work done around body shame and body love and self-love kind of stuff, so that it's not a solution. It's just an added bonus to what's already been taken care of on the inside.
I think that's so important. And I don't know if you saw the documentary called Embrace.
No, I didn't.
You've got to watch it. It's phenomenal. It's an Australian lady, Taryn, and what I kind of took away from it. So you know how you normally do the before and after. Before you've got this overweight body, and after you've got the skinny body. Well, hers was the reverse, and it went viral. And she posted a photo of her before as a bodybuilder and after as a mum of 3. And so she's got a little bit of a belly, and nothing major. She's not obese by any means, but she didn't like what had happened to her belly after having 3 children. And obviously she wasn't going to ever be the body that she was before. But what I really took away from this movie was, I am never going to be enough until I decide I am enough.
Yeah.
And it's so ingrained in us through media and everything else to like, it doesn't matter. I've been at my thinnest, which is probably maybe a few pounds lighter than I am now. Not, before I was 21, I was probably 10 or 15 pounds lighter. But that's not realistic. Like, I was still a teenager and still growing and developing. I didn't get breasts till I was 22. I was a late starter.
Oh, me too. I had some beautiful B cups. I'm just telling you.
So I think, watching it though, I just went, okay, at some point, like, there's always going to be a tummy tuck, or there's always going to be my boobs that, I am never going to be more beautiful than I am right now, because it is all downhill from here. I'm 42. I'm going to get older. I'm going to have wrinkles. I'm going to have saggier boobs. I'm probably not going to get too much skinnier. Like, obviously, if I work out in that, but I'm around the size that I should be. I'm not by any means obese. But I just remember watching it going, oh, I better get on board with that then, because I'm never going to be enough otherwise. And so I encourage everyone to watch Embrace. I also love Forks and Knives and What the Health on Netflix. So for anyone wanting to educate themselves on food and changes. So when you were talking about the shame around being in that larger body and having to, the seatbelts and the things like that, it's interesting. I was looking for photos to post today of my weight loss, and I couldn't really find many that showed my whole body and how big I was at my heaviest, because I was always hiding behind someone or cutting turning or in between people. And I noticed that yours is kind of the same. It's a cut off picture on you before and after. And it's like, so there's a lot of this shame that when we're a little bit outside of the weight that we want, or a lot, where we can start to engage in all kinds of behavior, like not wanting. I've been there where I didn't want to eat as much in front of people because I was heavier than I normally was. And are they going to say something? And they think that they're looking after your best interests.
Yeah.
Do you, I think someone commented today that their biggest challenge is eating late at night. And I think that there is something about the lonely hours. Mm-hmm. Did you find yourself eating when you were alone, or late in the evening when things are quiet and you have all the thinking and the feeling to do?
Absolutely. I mean, it was a total lesson in mindfulness versus mindlessness. I mean, that's exactly what it was, because what I really wanted in the moments where I would be eating late at night by myself was connection. And you maybe have seen, I think it's a TED Talk, that the opposite of addiction is connection. Have you ever seen that?
No.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful. It was actually, I read it as an article, but I feel like it came from a TED Talk, and the basis of it was the opposite of addiction is connection, and that if we had connection, we wouldn't have the addictions that we have, and I truly believe that to a point. And there's, I think there's something to be said for any kind of addiction, that there's something in the moment that's missing that we think that thing is going to fulfill, right? So whether it's drugs, or whether it's alcohol, whether it's food, or whether it's sex, or whether it's porn, or whether it's sleep, or whether it's travel, like it can also be socially accepted things, like, people that feel like they need to jet set all the time. It's fun if you want to jet set, but also slow down and ask, like, is there something missing where you can't just be where you are? Right. And so I think for me, the late night eating was always a mindfulness thing. I thought there was something else I needed. I wasn't willing to slow down and ask what it was that I needed. And so instead I went for the easy thing instead, which would be snacking.
Well, and I think, I noticed myself, I've been doing a lot of work on childhood stuff and different things in this past year. And there was one particular evening about a month ago, I just had a sad day and I just wasn't feeling great. And I was sitting there with something warm. It was like maybe a grilled cheese sandwich or something. And I wasn't particularly hungry, but I was sitting there kind of like really sad and eating this warm, gooey cheese warm thing. And I had this moment where I connected it to that was what I did in my childhood. When I was bullied in the playground and isolated and alone, I would sit there with my warm hot dog or my warm cheese toastie or my warm pizza. And so there's such an anchor for me around warm comfort food. And as I was eating this, I just sort of had this connection of I was trying to fill myself up with that warmth, that it was having it in my belly was that feeling of like connectedness to what I was needing. Mm-hmm. So how have you, obviously for me, I've sort of looked at like the awareness of it. How have you been able to start breaking those connections? Because otherwise you get re-triggered, and every time something happens that triggers you into loneliness or sadness, first thing you want to do is go and have all of those warm foods.
Right.
So I know for myself, I haven't been able to stop it every time. I have the awareness of it and I still choose to engage in the behavior. Yeah. Sometimes I can. But have you found anything that's worked for you?
Well, I think you nailed it. I think it's the awareness, and then you decide what you want to do with it, right? So it doesn't, and I'm not by any means an emotional eating expert at all. It's not at all the work I do at all. But it's, it just happens to be a part of my story, and so people like to talk about that. For me, it's all about having. It's all about the asshole versus the asset of the mind, right? And so for me, it really is that ability to say like, yes, this is what's going on in the moment. I truly believe that we live in the feeling of our thinking. Right. So we don't need to change our thinking. But if we recognize that the only reason we feel a certain way or we feel that we need a certain thing is because of the thinking that we have in our head. It's never an outside circumstance. It's not because somebody did something that makes us want to do this thing. And the proof is, one of my dear friends and colleagues, Amir Karkouti, he has a new book that's coming out. And one of the things he wrote in there that I love that really illustrates this is if you look at the biggest thing that's stressing you out right now and that you think is, being caused by something outside of you, and then you immediately were going into surgery 5 minutes from now and being put under anesthesia, would that same thing still affect you while you're under anesthesia? And the answer is no, right? Because you're not conscious of it anymore. Anymore, right? You're under anesthesia. So it can't be the thing. It has to be our thinking about the thing. And so to port that over to eating, it's what thoughts do we have about the thing we're putting in our mouth, right? Does it make us feel discomfort? Does it take us back to this place where we felt like, for me as a kid, and when I say as a kid, I mean as an adult, eating was to celebrate. Eating was to prepare for a hard day. Eating was to unwind from a hard day. It's like,
Oh yeah, I was the same. I was like, I did a good job, I'd go out and drink and party.
Yeah.
I had a bad job, I'd go out and drink and party. It didn't matter. It was my way. Food, alcohol was my way of celebrating, comforting, everything. But I definitely think, there was something you commented on there. And I think that for me, the self-awareness and the sitting with the feeling, as I said, I don't get it right all the time, but I definitely feel like it stops it more often. I'm more comfortable with being okay with those harder feelings. I'm not labeling and judging them as much. It's like, okay, so I'm having a hard day, and I don't need to shift that feeling all of the time by using something.
Right. Yeah. For
sure.
For
people who are, I think that there's people who I know are tuning in who have small amounts of pounds to lose and want to be healthier. But I know that I also have people who are at that extreme weight where they have over 100 pounds to lose. That's a hard thing to face. I think that would terrify me. I find it difficult even thinking about losing 5 or 10 pounds. So you talked about it being just like one day, one step at a time. In the very beginning, when you were so overwhelmed, where did you begin? Did you begin with your team of doctors? And what would you recommend to someone that's day one and they have that kind of weight to lose?
Well, I think it's really important to look at this and really, really keep the perspective that it's a long game, right? That there's nowhere to get to, that everything's fine. This is not that I'm telling you right now, and this is something that we hear a lot in success and financial prosperity, that people say, oh, I won the lottery, but I still wasn't happy, or I was making 6 figures in my job and I still wasn't happy. And we hear these stories all the time in personal growth. The same goes with the weight loss. Don't think that when you lose the weight, then you're going to be happy. Because I'm telling you, this is the way it worked in my life. I thought that when I lost the weight, I was just going to be happy. Everything was going to work. And it's that line of thinking that there is something outside of you that can add to or remove from your wholeness, that there's something outside of you that can add to or remove from your happiness. That's what makes the weight loss challenge so big. Because if weight loss, one of the things I advocate is living a not so serious life, right? That's a huge core tenet of my life. And I'll say really quickly, the reason that I'm qualified to talk about living a not so serious life, the reason I'm qualified to talk about not being a prisoner and being a self-leader is because I still take myself way too seriously and have tons of prisoner moments. Like, that's why I'm qualified to talk about this stuff. So this is not like you do this now and forever. Like, you do it once and then you're set. And it's not like I'm the guru saying I have this all figured out. I don't have anything figured out. I'm making this shit up as I go along. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But the reason I say that is because when I talk about advocating living a not so serious life, I don't mean just being silly and playful and goofy all day. What I mean is not making everything so significant, right? So if weight loss is not significant, then you don't waste energy saying I'm doing something right or doing something wrong. If you need to lose weight to assume a certain identity, you're losing weight for the wrong reasons.
I like that. The girls are saying they love that. We've got Nicole and Davika here. The girls are tuning in. So what would you say to your 7-year-old self? What do you think he needed to know when this all began?
The first thing that comes to mind is actually is a practice that I have now that I would have loved to have given to my 7-year-old self. And he probably would have been like, stranger danger, who are you? But let's just assume he recognized me in the future and said it was okay to talk to me. I have this practice now where, sometimes when I have the 2-pound weight gain and my mind does start to spiral and I get really concerned that I'm going to gain all the weight back, the path of least resistance is to beat myself up or shame myself or do something drastic or fast for the entire day or whatever. To overcome these 2 pounds and to make sure that I don't make a stupid mistake and gain all my weight back. And what I finally got to this place of doing is this practice that I'll do anytime I feel this way is I'll sit down and I can do this for anything that I'm fearful of, but this, especially for the weight one, this is how this practice was developed for me, was through the weight stuff, was I will sit there and I will close my eyes and I will say, I would still love you even if you gain back every single pound. Mm. I would still unconditionally, Jason, I would unconditionally love you even if you gain back every single pound.
Yeah.
And in that way, I could sit there and say, you know what? I gained those 2 pounds and I'm still fully loved, unconditionally supported, accepted 100%, even if I gained all that weight back. And anytime I do that practice, the next thing I want to do is something that is nourishing to my body. I want to make a different food choice. I want to go work out, not because I have to, but because I know I'm loved anyways. So why not go do that thing?
Yeah, you're loved and you're enough. I think that you made the comment a minute ago about there's nowhere to get. And I think that for anyone who's starting on this journey, and for me who's yo-yoed so many times, the thing that I wish I knew is that don't be focused on the weight loss. Like, I tried everything, the same as you. It's like it was all about restriction and punishment and let's have less and lose the weight quickly. It was never about let's do this slow, let's do this consistently until now. Let's just be happy in my body. Let's notice when I have those body dysmorphia moments. What helps me is sometimes rewatching those Netflix documentaries, rewatching Forks and Knives and What the Health, and realizing how deadly a lot of diseases from all of the foods I was putting in my body before. So the more I inform and educate myself, the less that I want those things, because now I love myself so much.
Yeah. So
what would be number one movie that you think everyone should watch in the health space?
I really liked Forks Over Knives, actually. That was one of the ones that got me. And, it's kind of a shtick that I'm into bacon. I very, very rarely eat bacon, honestly.
Thank God.
I've switched bacon out for avocado. So I actually made a pretty good swap there. But the reason I say that Forks Over Knives was the documentary that I actually watched really early on in my weight loss journey that got me to pretty much stop eating almost all meat. Right. I really like that. I love the scientific studies of what happened with, the soldiers during war and I love the measurable.
The China study Everyone should read the China study. And I think, they have a great app. They have tons of recipes. They support you and help you. And then Engine 2 is the follow-up one on Netflix that goes into homes and shows people how to transition. So that's a great place for people to start.
And also make it easy for yourself. Yeah, just one other thing I want to say, make it easy for yourself. And this is the other thing that we didn't get to talk about, but that second prong about decision fatigue. I love that I can find 2 or 3 or 4 things that I really love to eat that are easy to prepare and they're healthy. And I just eat those all the time. Trying to do all this stuff all the time, it doesn't work.
Yeah,
it doesn't.
No, I agree. Make it easy.
Yes.
My favorite is lentil bolognese because it freezes well and I can make like 7 portions and it has all of my fiber and protein in the lentils. So what's one of your favorite dishes to cook that's healthy and doesn't involve bacon?
Yeah, so I'm not a cook. So literally, like I'd say probably 6 to 7 times a week I have eggs and avocado. So eggs and avocado is one of my big go-tos. I love it, scrambled eggs and avocado. And also, and you probably won't like this if you're vegan, but cottage cheese and fruit is a big one for me. I do cottage cheese and fruit several times a week, great protein, and get the fruit in there as well. And also about a year ago, I started doing intermittent fasting and having bulletproof coffee in the morning. And so that's what I've been doing now for over a year. And that actually helped me drop another 20, 25 pounds. Doing that for a year. So fasted cardio, intermittent fasting, having bulletproof for breakfast, not actually eating my first meal until 12 or 1, and then only eating for an 8-hour period from 12 to 8 or from 1 to 9.
Okay. And so you don't cook anything?
Besides eggs, I'm not a cook. I'm not a cook at all. But it's so easy. It literally takes me no more than 5 minutes to make any meal that I eat, and I love that.
Well, now that you're in LA, I'm going to have you over for lentil bolognese and I'll make it with me from scratch.
We'll do it on Facebook Live so you can see how fumbly I am with utensils. I'll probably cut myself like for 20 minutes straight.
I was actually on a vegan cooking show recently. It was hilarious because I'm not much of a cook either, but she wanted me to come on and I made a shepherd's pie with lentils and it was amazing. So I think there's some good meals that we can get you on. So last tip.
Yeah. Oh,
last thing. Yeah. Anything you want to say to finish off?
Yeah, I just hope anybody watching this that has physical weight they want to lose, they just are really super gentle on themselves and they make it as easy as possible. And the big thing too is look out for what we in the weight loss community call NSVs. NSV stand for non-scale victories, right? So if the scale's not moving, look for other victories. Look for the clothes fitting a little looser, or the seat in the movie theater feeling like you have a little more space, or a compliment you get from somebody, or you just feel like you have 5% more energy than you did before. Those things will keep you going when the scale's not moving.
Oh my God, I love that. That was amazing. So for those of you who need to go on this weight loss journey, thank you, Jason, for all of your tips. I hope that you will go back and rewatch this video with a notepad and write down every tip that he shared, because there were so many great ones, even just in the first 15 minutes where I was like, yeah, that is just gold. So go back, write down the movies, the tip lists, all the different things. If you go to Kirsty TV on YouTube and have a look at our playlist, we have 100 different videos, and we have some other ones where we've interviewed people on weight loss previously. So feel free to go through and check those out. Tune in Tuesdays at 7 p.m. when we're doing these interviews live, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Jace.
Bye. Thank you.